Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this is going to be a rather different comment or question from the ones I usually do, and maybe a different sort of response as well. It's going to take us into a hopefully interesting conversation, and the comment comes to us from Orange, Pop, and Birthday Cake, who said, "Hey Loki Darklighter, I'm not particularly invested in your op-eds. Let's be frank here, if we all had to actually pay for SheetTube, you'd have 0 subs. But here's an OG thort from an OG Star Wars Gen Xer. Just say Apophis or that new space rock actually hits us within the next decade. You really gonna still care whether or not Star Wars is better on TV or cinema? I mean, your entire family might be asphyxiating or burning to a crisp, right? Now, stop being such a loser and get some real perspective like any grown man ought to." Okay, so first of all, if we are indeed hit by an asteroid in the not too distant future, and I am very much aware that there is one set to come back around 2032, I believe, and there is a chance, a pretty decent chance from what I understand, that it could hit Earth and be quite disastrous. But if that does happen, yes, I will instantaneously stop caring about Star Wars as I burn to a crisp. My last thought on this Earth will not be, damn, I wish they had gotten that sequel trilogy right. Instead, my last thought or thoughts will be something along the lines of, I hope my family and my friends know how much I loved them, and that maybe I did some good with the time I had and with the things that I did, even if I did spend a whole lot of time talking about Star Wars. In fact, a little while back now, to share a rather personal story, I guess, and speaking of asphyxiating, oddly enough, one night I woke up in the middle of the night completely unable to breathe, and I don't mean like struggling for breath, I mean completely unable to breathe to the point where my very first kind of crazy thought that entered my head was there is no more air anymore, because that's what it felt like to me. It felt like there was nothing there to actually breathe in anymore. And so the first thing I did after a moment or two of just sheer panic was to wake up my wife, and in this very strange sort of way, and this again was a thought that went through my head, I was happy to see that air still existed because I did genuinely think that was a possibility that it didn't exist anymore, and that she was fine, she was breathing, everything was okay with her. That was one of the most relieved moments of my entire life, even though I thought I was at the same time dying. However, she was very confused because I couldn't just kind of tell her what was going on. I obviously could not talk to her. I could just kind of gesture at my throat, and she just wasn't getting it. And why would she think I'm choking in the middle of the night on what? And she was looking more and more scared, and that is when I thought, oh my god, I am about to die in front of her right here and right now and like this. And that was the worst feeling I have ever had in my entire life. Not that I was about to die, but that her last memory of me was going to be like this. And what the hell was that going to do to her for the rest of her life? Now, obviously, I didn't die. It took about maybe 15 seconds before I could start kind of gasping for breath. It turns out that I had some really, really bad acid reflux, and it had backed all the way up into my throat and cut off my airway. Not to mention it burned the hell out of my throat. And I had no idea that is what was happening at the time, or could be happening, or that something like that could even happen in the first place. Apparently, it is not the most uncommon thing ever. But I didn't have a clue because I had never had any sort of acid reflux problems before. None. My stomach is or was like a rock. Nothing had ever bothered it like that before, and nothing remotely like that had ever happened before. But anyway, my point here, not to get too dramatic, I am fine. After all, I'm not fishing for sympathy. I'm not telling you this story so you can say, oh, poor Thor in the comments. I'm fine. But nevertheless, I do know what it is like to actually think you are about to die. I very vividly remember the whole experience. I remember what I thought, and it feels like an eternity, even though, again, it was like 15 seconds maybe. And I slept basically sitting upright for like a month after this, almost like in a seated position, and I still sleep with my head propped up more than I ever had before, just in case it happens again, even though I've had nothing like it since. I don't have acid reflux. Either way, again, my point is, I know what is important to me. I know that in the grand scheme of things, Star Wars doesn't really matter, that if it went away tomorrow, life would go on just fine for myself and everyone else who had been a fan. And so anyone who says to me that I need to get some real perspective like a grown man should, can go fuck themselves. That said, this isn't the first time I've gotten a comment like this one, where someone says something along the lines of, why are you, as again a grown-ass man, still talking about Star Wars? It is for kids, grow up already and do something real or important with your life. And every time I get one of these comments, I am reminded of a rather famous saying from Star Wars, ironically enough. Maybe the most famous one to not come from one of the movies, but instead it came from a game. It came from Knights of the Old Republic 2, when Kreia says that apathy is death, which I've always interpreted to basically mean that if you don't care about anything, if you are not willing to do something, you may as well be dead, because that's about how useful you are to either yourself or to anyone and everyone else. And I do agree with that to an extent. I do think that if you don't care about anything to the point where you won't even do anything to help yourself or those you care about the most, that if you won't or can't muster up the will to engage in your own life, well, you need help, because that is no way to live, or that is just not living at all. There is a difference between being alive and living life. But at the same time, we also can't go to the opposite extreme. We can't care about everything. There is literally, I'd say, so much tragedy always happening at any given moment in the world, and I mean on the personal level to just tragic events that affect many people, but there are so many things going wrong in the world, so many people being hurt or suffering at any given time, that if all we did was think about that or try to stop all of it from happening, we would just kind of become depressed and miserable. And just like being apathetic defeats the purpose of being alive, I would say being way too compassionate to the point of, again, caring about everything all the time is also no way to live life. Even the Jedi, the most compassionate beings in the Star Wars galaxy, an example for us to look towards and to be more like, I always argue, well, even they realize they cannot worry about everyone and help all the time. At one point in The Phantom Menace, for example, Qui-Gon Jinn flat out tells Shmi, Anakin's mother, that I didn't actually come here to free slaves, even though, of course, he knows how bad slavery is. And if he could, if it was relatively simple, he'd no doubt help free the slaves. But not only are there other matters he needs to tend to right now, but he cannot help everyone all the time. He does need to pick and choose his battles. He has to be, you could say, apathetic at times for his own good, as well as for the good of others that he can help. Furthermore, Jedi do not spend every waking moment of their life helping other people, or thinking about helping other people, or plotting and planning ways to do that. Yes, they derive a great deal of joy from helping others, from knowing they have or fulfill a sort of greater purpose, and it is their primary goal or mission or reason for being to help others and for there to be balance. But many of them do indeed have other interests or even hobbies that occupy some of their time. And believe it or not, and I know some don't because they think having no attachments means Jedi must be these emotionless robots, which makes it very hard to be compassionate, since compassion, as defined by Anakin in Episode 2, is unconditional love for all, so there's a bit of a contradiction there. But anyway, Jedi can even have and spend time with friends. They are allowed to have them as long as they do not become attachments, which simply means caring about them to the point where you would pretty much just put them above other people. I mean, it wasn't exactly a secret that Anakin spent time with Padme. It's not like he had to hide that from the other Jedi. They knew the two were friends, they just didn't know or ignored how close they actually were. In other words here, I would argue that both absolute compassion and absolute apathy are death, that they are the death of the individual. And somewhere between the two, probably closer to a compassion, mind you, is where life truly is. We have to care about things, about other people and the hard times that can and do befall them, but not to the point where we never take any time for ourselves to enjoy whatever the hell we want, and thus are reminded of why life is worth living in the first place. Heck, that's basically what balance in Star Wars even is. It's acknowledging the dark side exists, that bad things happen, and that bad people are out there, but not spending every waking moment trying to eradicate it or anything like that, assuming that we're even possible, which it's not. Balance is knowing that evil and selfishness are real things, that they are temptations, but keeping them at bay the best you can so that they do not consume you, so that you can be a good person who also finds your own personal joy in life from time to time. And one of my personal joys in this life is talking some Star Wars, and just because I do that, and I do it for a living instead of doing any number of other things that maybe you could argue would be more impactful overall to the world, but I would still argue, or I hope anyway, that my videos are indeed enjoyed by others, and in some small way they do make the world a better place. But anyway, just because I talk some Star Wars doesn't mean I don't care about other things, and that I don't care about them a great deal. It doesn't mean it is the most important thing in my life or that I in any way don't have my priorities in order. Believe me, my family and my friends come before anything else, before myself. And I take my responsibilities as a human being on this planet rather seriously too. I do try to live a balanced life. I try to give more than I take. I try to help more than I hinder. And to me, that is what being a grown-ass man is all about. Well, that is all I got for you this time. Hopefully what I had to say here made some sense to you, that you got something from it. Either way, you can take to the comments below and tell me what you thought about it, or you can ask a question for a future lightning response video, maybe a more polite one next time, I don't know. But all you gotta do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.